I pulled into my driveway after 2 weeks away, bone-tired from the red-eye flight out of Vancouver. My mother had suffered a massive stroke, and I had sat at her bedside through the darkest nights of it. She was stable, now thank God, but all I could think about was getting home to Elizabeth, my wife. She has early onset Alzheimer's, and 14 days apart had felt like a lifetime. The house was completely dark. That hit me wrong immediately. It was only 8 p.m., and Elizabeth always kept the living room lamps on until bedtime. The soft glow through the curtains was one of the constants I clung to. I hauled my suitcase from the trunk, fumbled for my keys, and that's when I heard it, a faint, rhythmic thumping, coming from inside like someone pounding weakly on woodland beneath it. A muffled, hoarse cry that clawed straight into my chest. My heart seized. "Elizabeth," I shouted, jamming the key into the lock so hard the metal scraped my knuckles raw. I threw the door open. The thumping grew louder, frantic, desperate. It was coming from the basement. I dropped the suitcase, sprinted to the basement door. A heavy steel hasp had been screwed into the frame, secured by a thick padlock I had never seen before in my life. Someone had locked it from the outside. "Elizabeth, I'm here," I screamed, rattling the door until the frame shook. A broken sob answered Mimi's voice, shredded almost beyond recognition. "Robert, please. Water." I lost my mind in that moment. I tore into the garage, seized the longest crowbar I owned, and attacked the padlock like a man possessed. Sparks flew. The first blow bent the hasp. The second cracked the screw heads. The third sent the entire lock clattering down the stairs. I flung the door open, and the stench slammed into me. Urine, terror sweat, and the sour reek of a body pushed past endurance. I hit the light switch. The single bulb flickered once and steadied. And there, at the bottom of the stairs, lay my Elizabeth, filthy, skeletal, trembling uncontrollably in a torn cotton nightgown. Her beautiful silver hair was matted with grime. Her lips were split and bleeding. She tried to lift her head, eyes wild and unfocused, and when they finally fixed on me, pure animal panic flooded her face before recognition flickered in. "Robert, is it really you?" she rasped, voice barely a whisper. I was down those stairs in 3 bounds, gathering her feather-light body into my arms. She weighed nothing. 14 days. 14 days without food, without water, without light. I carried her up into the living room, laid her on the couch, and dialed 911 with fingers that wouldn't stop shaking. While the dispatcher took the address, I looked around. Furniture had been shoved aside. Stacks of flattened moving boxes leaned in the corner. Elizabeth's weekly pill organized. Every photograph of our daughter Sarah that used to sit on the mantel gone. The paramedics arrived in under 6 minutes, but it felt like hours. As they worked on Elizabeth Eve's warm blankets, oxygen, they asked the question that turned my blood to ice. "Sir, when was the last time anyone checked on your wife?" 2 weeks ago, I heard myself say. I left her with our daughter. Sarah was supposed to stay here the whole time I was gone. The 2 paramedics exchanged a look I will never forget. They rushed Elizabeth to St. Michael's. I rode in the ambulance, clutching her cold hand, whispering over and over, "I've got you. Beth, I've got you now." At the hospital, a nurse pulled me into the corridor. "Mr. Caldwell, are you telling us your wife was locked in that basement for the entire 14 days you were away?" The words detonated inside my skull. 14 days in the dark. crying for help that never came. Detective Laura Moreau from the Toronto Police Service Elder Abuse Unit arrived an hour later. I told her everything. My name is Robert Caldwell. I'm 65, retired civil engineer. Elizabeth is 63, diagnosed with early-onset Alzheimer's 2 years ago. Our daughter Sarah is 38, a chartered accountant. She married David 3 years ago, a smug wealth consultant who never quite explained where the money came from. I never trusted him, but Sarah insisted she was happy. 2 weeks earlier, my mother stroked out in Vancouver. Sarah had practically pushed me out the door. Dad, go. I'll take care of Mom. Focus on Grandma. For the first week, she answered my daily calls with breezy reassurance. The second week, the calls went to voicemail, replaced by short texts. Super busy with Mom. Everything's fine. I should have known. Detective Moreau's next question froze the air in my lungs. During your absence, did you or your wife sign any new power of attorney documents? No. Why? She closed her notebook gently. Because, Mr. Caldwell, this wasn't neglect. This was premeditated. Elizabeth spent 3 days in hospitals, severely dehydrated, malnourished, hypothermic, even though it was September. When she was strong enough to come home, I went back to the house alone to search for answers. What I found shattered what was left of my heart. The basement had been turned into a prison cell. A single plastic bucket for a toilet. One threadbare blanket on the concrete. The light bulb unscrewed and hidden. Upstairs, Sarah's laptop sat open on the kitchen table, still logged in. I'm not proud that I invaded her privacy, but I opened folder after folder and felt the world tilt. Scanned documents. A power of attorney bearing Elizabeth's shaky signature. Dated 5 days after I left for Vancouver. Real estate papers. Bank records showing $75,000 drained from our savings and a $100,000 home equity line of credit taken against the house we had owned free and clear for 20 years. Every $175,000 total wired to Northbridge Capital Partners, a company incorporated 6 months earlier. Registered Director, David Morrison. Then I found the text thread between Sarah and David. Timestamped the 3rd night I was gone. Sarah, she keeps crying for Dad. This is harder than I thought. David, she'll forget. The confusion is our friend right now, Sarah. What if a neighbor hears? David, no one checks on them anymore. We're golden. Just keep her quiet until the transfer's clear. They had debated drugging her, decided it was too risky, and settled on the basement instead. I phoned Detective Moreau from the kitchen floor, surrounded by the evidence of my daughter's betrayal. Within hours, the house swarmed with police. They took the laptop, the forged documents, photographed the bucket, the scratch marks on the inside of the basement door, where Elizabeth had clawed until her fingers bled. Sarah and David's condo in Liberty Village was almost empty when police arrived. Furniture sold, clothes gone, garbage bags stuffed with shredded papers. But in one bag they found the smoking gun, boarding passes for Lisbon, a lease agreement for a furnished apartment in Portugal, a non-extradition country, and a handwritten note in Sarah's handwriting: leave Tuesday night. Dad not due back until Friday. Plenty of time. I had come home 3 days early because my mother turned the corner faster than anyone predicted. 3 days. If I had stayed the full 14, Elizabeth would have died alone in the dark, and my own daughter would have discovered the body wept prettily for the police, and vanished with every cent we owned. The arrests happened 6 days later at Pearson Airport. They were minutes from boarding a flight to Heathrow, first leg to Portugal. Sarah collapsed in handcuffs, sobbing, "Dad, please, it wasn't supposed to go this far." David stared straight ahead, face blank, already calculating his next lie. The charges were a litany of horror: elder abuse causing bodily harm, unlawful confinement, fraud over $5,000, forgery, conspiracy. David faced dozens more counts. His fund was a straight Ponzi scheme that had fleeced 32 elderly investors. Sarah had personally recruited half of them to Crown attorney Vanessa Patel met with me a week later. "This is the worst case of filial elder abuse I've prosecuted in 23 years, she said quietly. "We will ask for the absolute maximum." Bail was denied. I sat in the back of the courtroom and watched my little girl, once the child who begged for one more bedtime story, stand in orange coveralls and beg the judge through tears to let her come home. When her eyes found mine, her lips formed the word "Daddy." I turned and walked out. Some things, once broken, can never be called by the old names again. The criminal trial against Sarah began in June. The climax came on the day they wheeled Elizabeth into court to testify. She was frail, confused, wearing the soft blue cardigan I had bought her the previous Christmas. She looked at the judge and asked in a small voice if she could go home now. Then she saw Sarah in the prisoner's box, and her face lit up with pure joy. "Sarah, honey, there you are. When did you get here?" The courtroom went dead silent. Sarah began to sob uncontrollably. The Crown played the police video of the basement, the bucket, the scratches, the single blanket stiff with dried urine. Jurors wept openly. One man put his head in his hands. David took the stand. Against her pleading guilty in exchange for a reduced sentence and laid every detail at Sarah's feet. It was her research into capacity thresholds for power of attorney, her idea to wait for my absence, her calm suggestion that Mom will just go to sleep after a while. He claimed he had only gone along because he was afraid of losing her. The jury took 4 hours. Guilty on every single count. At sentencing, I read my victim impact statement while Sarah stood trembling between 2 sheriffs. "I taught my daughter right from wrong," I said, voice cracking. "I taught her that family is the one thing you protect at all costs." She looked at her confused, frightened mother and saw only $signs. She locked the woman who sang her lullabies in a dark hole and walked upstairs to order sushi. 12 years is not punishment, it is mercy, the judge agreed. 12 years for Sarah. Federal time, no parole eligibility for 8. David received 10, parole possible after 6. The civil suit settled for $425,000. In damages money we will likely never collect, but the judgment follows them for life. Sarah's CPA designation has been revoked forever. Elizabeth no longer remembers that she ever had a daughter. Sometimes she looks at the empty space on the mantel where Sarah's photos used to be and asks, "Did we used to have a little girl?" I tell her no, it was always just the 2 of us. And I hold her until the question fades. Last week she forgot my name for the first time. She studied my face with polite bewilderment and asked the caregiver who the nice man sitting beside her was. When recognition flooded back 20 minutes later, She burst into tears and clung to me like a child. Sarah stole our savings, our security, and the gentle years we were supposed to have left. But the cruelest theft was those 14 days in the dark hand every day since that has been tainted by what she did. I do not write. As far as the world is concerned, Elizabeth and I never had a daughter. And in the quiet evenings, when the lamps are on and Elizabeth dozes against my shoulder, I whisper into her hair the only truth that still matters. I'm here, Beth, I'm here, and no one will ever take you from me again.